Do you have a message? They're watching you right now. What do you say?
They should go back to their fucking country and stop fucking with mine, straight up. You guys destroyed my fucking industry. You guys think you're doing well and you're successful because you're able to get trucks. Because you're charging fucking LMIA drivers fucking $40,000.
All right, welcome to the Golden Belt Buckle Podcast. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about this video that a Canadian-born Punjabi put out. Well, not him, he was interviewed for it. But he's talking about how Punjabi immigrants have absolutely destroyed the trucking company or trucking industry in Canada by illegal and unsafe practices, underhanded hiring methods, and yeah, just we'll get into it. So there's a lot that could be covered on this video. Maybe I'll do 2 videos on this, but the one thing I want to mention before we get into the actual topic that I'm going to break down. He said at one point in the video, he's like, how would you like it if I was to go to your country, meaning India, and do the same thing to you, right? And I got thinking, they wouldn't even notice. Right? If all the data that I'm looking at is true, excuse me, they wouldn't even notice if he was driving like an idiot, because that's how they drive. If you've seen video footage of how they drive over there, he'd fit right in. So I found that kind of comical. But at one point, he mentioned the LMIA, Labor Market Impact Assessment document. And so we're going to break it down here and get more into it. I already did a video on work permit abuse. A lot of people didn't see the video because I only had like 20 subscribers at the time. So the video's largely been ignored, even though it's a good video. So let's get into what is the LMIA, labor market. What is he talking about? How are they abusing it? We'll get into that. So the Labor Market Impact Assessment document. When a Canadian employer, when a Canadian employer wants to hire a foreign worker, a temporary foreign worker, they can't just bring them over and have them work. They have to first offer the work to someone local if the job can be filled by a Canadian. Or I think it's someone also with a permanent residence. Sorry, my nose is, we had a rough day at work today. So I think a permanent residency person as well also qualifies. So they have to first check to make sure you can't get someone here to do the work. And they can prove this by putting an ad on Indeed. They can put an ad in the job bank, right? Anywhere where you advertise for a job. So after they do that and they can't find anyone, they get this document from the government. It costs them $1,000. That's key. It costs them $1,000, and the document doesn't expire right away. So after they get this piece of paper, which is essentially a ticket to Canada for the hopeful immigrant, they then, once the job offer is made, they've got the LMIA. They'll give it to the temporary worker. He will then attach that to his legal forms to get his work permit from our government. So once those 2 things are together, he can get his work permit. And then that work permit at the moment is tied to that specific employer. So for the immigrant, they view this as, hey, I got my ticket to Canada, right? This is the first step toward permanent residency. And then for the employer, it's supposed to be, all right, good. I couldn't find anybody, so you know, I can keep my business going, right? Keep serving my customers, right? Good business continuity, right? So that's what it is, and that's how it's supposed to work. So the scam, the way it's used in scams, is that they will follow the process. These employers will follow the process, and they'll put the job postings out to prove that no Canadian can fill the position. So they'll put their Indeed documents up, they'll put LinkedIn posts up, they'll put up job bank posts, and then when people call them for the job, they'll say, like they'll tell, we're not now, the position's full, they'll brush them off. So essentially they're advertising ghost jobs, and in the meantime, midst of doing this, they're telling the government we can't get our positions filled. So they're like, we've advertised for workers, but nobody wants to work here, so we can't, this is disrupting our operations, we need a temporary foreign worker. So they get this document from the government for $1,000, which again, remember, it's a ticket to Canada. It's your step to the door, first step in the door. And now they've got this, and they don't just get one, they get 3, 4, or 5 of them, right? They might have 10 trucks that are all full, and they've got 5 of these documents sitting here, right? So they'll take these documents that they're sitting on, because you can have more than one, and then they'll have an immigration or an immigration consultant, either, well, it could be domestic, working with somebody over in India, and because I'm not sure exactly how their process works. I know, I'll get into this, you'll see why a guy in Edmonton got charged for this, okay, so this scam. So they'll get this guy to go over to India. He's a recruiter, consultant, and he'll blow sunshine up the rear end of the Indian and be like, hey, look, you want to come to Canada? I have your ticket for you right here. But there's going to be a consultation fee, and that consultation fee is going to be $40,000 or $50,000 or $60,000. So what they're paying for is the LMIA. So the consulting company is charging, they're in cahoots with the employer, and I don't know what the kickback is, how much, but they're in cahoots with each other, and they're making a killing off of the immigrant that's trying to get a job. Now the immigrant is desperate, or the hopeful immigrant is desperate, so they will give that $40,000 or $50,000, $60,000. They will then, now they'll apply for their, I got a dog behind me, then they'll apply for their worker's permit, which is tied to the company, and if it's a trucking job, they will then get their letter of authentication, which they need to help them drive, right? Because that's the only way you're going to bypass the graduated licensing system, is by having your letter of authentication. And so then they get brought over, and they get put through the school, and the school, which is shady usually, the school will get them their license in just a couple weeks. They'll bypass the MELT program. We already talked about that. They'll compress the 103.5 hours into as short a time as possible. And then some of them still do their own driver certification. So now this instead of going to drive test, they get their driver's license certification right through the trucking school. So now they're working for this employer, and they're like, yay, I got this job now, I'm on my way. But what they don't realize is, so they've got $40,000, $50,000 invested into this employer, right? They've spent that money, and this employer, they're like puppet masters now. They have this employee. They have him right in the palm of their hand. I got a dog here that wants to be in the palm of my hand. Get out of here, Daisy. Go lay down. Come on, get out of here. So these drivers, they become truck drivers, the quick route. They're $40 in the hole with this employer. Sometimes the employer will loan them that money too. So now it's a different situation. And they will run the absolute piss out of this driver. The driver will not be allowed to call in sick. They will not get days off. They may not even get paid their wages. They may get set up on the driver Inc. model. There's all sorts of things that can happen to them. I was just reading about two guys from Brampton and now American listeners, you need to listen here. Not only were they given unsafe equipment to drive, not only was the guy forced to drive injured and drive 2 12-hour shifts back to back, but they were forced by their employer to break the cabotage rules, and they're picking up state-to-state freight, which is illegal. You can't do that as a Canadian, right? You cannot go to the States and start delivering around the States. So I said in one of my previous videos, what we do up here affects you, right? I mentioned, was it 44,000 illegal East Indians were encountered at the American border from Canada, right? That's one way. Another way is we're taking your loads from you, right? And I don't know, maybe that's why Arkansas wanted to, what was it, Bill HB 1569. They wanted to ban all non-American CDLs from their state, right? Because of this kind of nonsense. So you have absolutely exhausted drivers that are being abused, and it has been compared to indentured servitude because they can't really go anywhere, right? They can't quit that employer because their permit is tied to that employer. If they lose that job, they're going back to India and they're out $40,000 or 50 or 60. In the case of these two drivers, the one guy, he paid $7, and then when his buddy came on, they upped it to $10,000. So that, in a way, they got off lucky, right? So that's the scam. And you know, a message to anybody who's East Indian, like if you're in India and somehow you're watching this video, which is highly possible, don't go for it, right? So the CBC, I'm looking down at my notes. The CBC, again, the CBC is putting out some good information here. They actually said, now listen to this, in a lot of cases, labor shortages are just self-serving. It's a self-serving narrative to serve corporate interests, right? Where have we heard that? You hear that in the trucking industry, right? You know, if you're one of these companies that wants to make a killing off immigrants, you need to have a driver shortage, right? It's in your interest to have a driver shortage. Your business model depends on it, right? Because you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars off these hopeful immigrants, right? So it is illegal. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to do this. You can't just sell these documents. The penalty is anywhere between $500 and $100,000. And there was an Edmonton. I mentioned this earlier that about how this works. An Edmonton-based immigration company has been charged for doing this very thing. What did it say they got charged with? They were selling these LMIAs for $30,000 to $40,000 each, and they got charged. And now our politicians, they're cracking down on this practice, and they're actually calling for an end of your worker permit being tied to your employer, specifically because of the abuse, right? So let's run this through. All right, you've stayed with me this far. Let's quickly tie a bow onto this so we can get a look at what's going on here. Let me take a drink first. So let's pretend you're in Punjab, right? We've been talking about India, but like specifically we've been talking about Punjab and how, you know, there's not a lot of opportunities in Punjab, right? Not a lot of work. Doesn't seem to matter what caste you are. There's just no work, right? We talked about that. So here you are. You know, your mom and dad, they probably love you. They want the best for you. So they take a loan out. They take a loan out against their own property to give you this money so that you can go to your local consultant, which apparently they're all over the place over there, and you can sit down with them and you can, you know, they can blow sunshine up your rear end. And, you know, you've been watching all of these propaganda movies that are coming out about the glories of North America, and you're listening to all these Canadian, Punjabi, Canadian, American pop singers singing about how great it is over in the United States or Canada, right? You're taking in Western culture every day. You're seeing it every day, and then finally you get your opportunity. You sit down with one of these recruiters, and they tell you, oh, it's everything you could ever dream of. And so you tell your parents. Your parents they put up their property, a loan against it. They give you the money because they love you. They want a better future for you. And then you come over here. You go through the whole process I just mentioned, and your employer owns you, and you find out it's not what you thought it was. They're abusive. They don't care about you. And if you died, then they would just get another LMIA and bring in the next one. It's a steady pipeline, right? So you know, it's abusive, right? In a lot of cases, I can, well, I say a lot of cases, but in my mind, I can picture the recruiter sitting down, because I've sat across from a whole bunch of them, okay, in my trucking career. They always blow sunshine up your ass. And I can picture them saying to you, you'll have your own business. You'll have your own business when you come to Canada. We'll show you how to be your own. You'll have your own trucking company, right? You know, and get you hooked up under the Driver Inc. model. And, you know, that we'll do another video on that. I'm going to cover that. But, you know, and then you find out you're not, you know, you set up under this Driver Inc. model. You're not paying any taxes, and you got no employee rights. And on top of that, you're in it for your employer. Like, but that's for another video. Anyways, that's the video, and that's what he was talking about. When he talked about LMIA abuses, he talked about a lot more, but if you're East Indian and you want to come over here, don't listen to a word these guys tell you. They're all a bunch of thieves. That's all I got. Until next time, keep the rubber side down. Cheers.